coming up this week on the Markcast. Well, here we are, CFL Week 14, Banjo Bowl preview, everything else, lots of CFL content coming to you this week. First, we talk with Darrell Davis of the Regina Leader Post, getting his thoughts, everything contentious Banjo Bowl coming up here. The headshot heard around the world last week from the Roughriders. What do we have to say?
You've seen what the Bombers do after somebody wrongs them or somebody beats them. They bounce back as well as any team in the CFL. So I should say I'm scared for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, but it's part of football to go into somebody's backyard after beating them and saying, oh, here we go. Winnipeg is going to be pumped up, ready to play. It's going to be loud. It's going to be hot.
Then they might be one of the hottest teams in the CFL right now, even coming off a loss. The Trey Ford-led Edmonton Elks sweeping the CFL by storm. We have Morley Scott coming on, sharing his thoughts on Trey Ford and the rest of the team.
He likes Trey Ford. There's a misconception out there that Chris Jones doesn't like Trey Ford or Chris Jones doesn't like Canadian quarterbacks, which is just ridiculous. Coaches like quarterbacks that win. Doesn't matter what their birth certificate is, right?
Then a big East Division matchup here Friday night in Ottawa. We have Hamilton taking on the REDBLACKS, getting Tim Baines' thoughts on the East Division. What do we think of it this year in the CFL?
Coaches hate to put the must-win tagline on any game that's truly not, truly, is it must-win? Well, no, they could lose and still make the playoffs, but it sure isn't likely. So this is about as close to a must-win game as you can get.
And then without a doubt, the hottest team in the CFL, the Toronto Argonauts, getting Mike Hogan, voice of the Argos, thoughts on the team to beat here in the CFL. Chad Kelly, everything else, what do we got?
The Argos have an opportunity to win to start 10-1. That's only been done once in Argo history, Doug Flutie's first year here. So if you compare the teams 10 games in, 9-1 versus 9-1, this edition of the Argos has scored 4 more points than the Doug Flutie Argos of 1996. That's the kind of team that this group is right now. It's doing some very strange things in terms of Argo history, which I guess in the 150th anniversary season should be expected.
Should be good. Like and subscribe. Hey guys, welcome to the Markcast. Reed here. Big CFL week this week, looks like. Banjo Bowl, exciting matchups this weekend. They say, the season doesn't start until after Labor Day. So getting all of that today. And save for any future Reed updates. I think mostly CFL content this week. Working on some XFL interviews. Short week with Labor Day and the holiday and kind of all that stuff. My work schedule. Thursday night football happening here after, hopefully... that was an exciting one. Let's say the Detroit Lions have the upset against the Chiefs at home. We'll see. But busy week this week. Like I said, short week with all of that stuff. So doing our best. Got 4 great CFL interviews for you. Really appreciate Darrell Davis coming on. Hot Banjo Bowl right now with Saskatchewan going into Winnipeg, taking them on at home. Should be a great one this weekend. And then, like I said, Morley Scott coming on. We had him on last season. Appreciate that. I know we lean on Dave Campbell a lot too. Really appreciate the guys over there that cover the Edmonton Elks. And then I really appreciate Tim Baines coming on. I've been trying to get Tim on for a couple weeks. I think Tim was on a holiday. He said he was up at his cottage playing golf. So good to get Tim back on. And then Mike Hogan, we had him on preseason preview of the Argos. We'll have to see kind of how did his preseason predictions go. Argos looking hot as always. Like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed the NFL football last night and this weekend. Should be exciting. Triple header on Saturday, and then the Friday night game, the Friday night game, if I could speak here, the Hamilton Ticats going into Ottawa. Hopefully that lives up to at least a little bit of excitement. The East is kind of a hot dumpster fire right now, so as we talk about with Darrell coming up. So hope that's a good one. Like I said, we'll work on some more XFL content here coming up. I know they had a new hire this week over in the sponsorships department with Nish Mehta coming on the team. He previously worked at Twitter, aka X. So that's exciting to have some new blood going in there over at the XFL. Always like to get new executives added there on the roster. But we'll work on it. Should be good. Like I said, get us up to 3,500 subscribers if you can. Looking to give away an XFL or USFL kickoff game ticket here. Once we hit that mark, like I said, getting ramped up for the Grey Cup in Hamilton should be exciting. So if you are into the CFL content here while we're waiting in the XFL and the USFL offseason, make sure you are subscribed. Take part in that. We'll see you guys at the end. Thanks again. Well, here we are back, a man who was retired, unretired, all during the podcast. Here we have Darrell Davis. Darrell, we already have our ticket spot for Hamilton. Evan Willsmore is joining us, and then we have Jason Hussey who's there. We have a whole troop coming this year to Hamilton doing the live show, so I hope you'll be a part of that. Welcome back here. How are you doing?
Absolutely. Well, you can be. I'll be a part of that. Reed, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on again, and I look forward to seeing you in Hamilton. I'll send out the reservation stuff for the hotel rooms in the next day or so. How's that?
Wow, we're getting on it. Well, it'll be good. So this was kind of the headshot heard around the world here, coming off of very exciting. I listened, and then I was filming over the weekend. I was listening on my CFL Plus and or whatever was it on the Sports Network, and then ended up watching the game and the overtime. What did you make? Incredible kind of Labor Day classic.
It was quite a finish. It's never gone. The Labor Day Classic, I don't know. I started going to them in the 70s or 80s, I think, Reed. And I've never seen overtime before in the Labor Day Classic. So that made it pretty exciting. But the Roughriders were poised to lose it, as you said. That penalty by Pete Robertson, the headbutt on Zach Collaros, gave Winnipeg first and goal on the 2-yard line. They ran it in for a touchdown to go ahead 24-20. And we thought, they're just imploding. They're in big trouble now. And somehow they managed to pull it out. They got a single point in the field goal before the regulation time ended and put together a tremendous drive in overtime to go ahead. And Jake Dolegala, the quarterback, threw a great 2-point conversion attempt that some people are disputing, say it might have dropped, but that was the difference in the point difference in the game. Anyway, it was exciting to watch, sold out like the Labor Day Classic usually is, so it's always fun being there.
In terms of the reaction to the headbutt, and I saw our friend Jeff Hamilton doing the media scrum with Collaros, and he seemed very upset about it. And from what I was reading online, like I said, working this week, like Craig Dickinson didn't think it was a big deal, and then if I had seen it, it would have been a big deal. Or what did you make? It just seems kind of messy here.
Well, it was the heat of the moment for sure, and Pete Robertson, to his credit, we always judge a guy quite often by how they react afterwards. Pete Robertson was at his locker, met with the media afterwards. He met the media again at practice the first day back and said, "This is stupid. I shouldn't have done that. I apologize to my team." He did stand up and apologize to his team. He said, "I'm glad that Zach Collaros is okay. I just did a stupid thing, and the thing I'm maddest about is potentially hurting my team." Craig Dickinson, in his first availability after the game, after he saw the film, said, "Now I realize it was a serious hit. We'd apologize. We're glad that Zach Collaros is okay too. We're going to send an apology." Zach Collaros even mellowed his case a little bit in his first availability after the game when he said, "I realize Pete Robertson isn't a dirty player," and he isn't. He's not known for that. He did something stupid at a very tense moment of the football game, and he's admitted that to his credit. It's so different from how the Roughriders imploded last year with that Garrett Marino incident. This year they've matured. It's really been quite impressive, Reed, to think what a stupid play it's been, but how they've dealt with it and are able to, in their minds, hopefully move forward. I know it'll be an issue going into Winnipeg. Of course it will be. There's always a great rivalry there, but they've handled it as well as you could expect themselves to handle it. Pete Robertson isn't appealing the suspension. He said, "That's what I deserve. I'll live with that. I'm a man. I can handle it. I'm sorry I hurt my team, and I'm glad that Zach Collaros is okay." So what else can you do? But away you go.
Is it a harsh enough penalty?
Yeah, that's a good debate. 2 games might have been closer, but remember Marino got 4 games, basically 2 for wrenching the ankle of Jeremiah Mazzoli, and maybe even having a lot to do with ending his career. There was pure malice in Garrett Marino's maneuver last year. This was something that a guy just was standing there thinking, "Oh, right, I'm invincible. I just made and he had just made a really big play. He turned around, watched the incompletion, then kind of flexed, I did it, and then turned around and went, "Oh," and thought, as soon as he did it, you could see he was thinking, what a stupid thing, and his teammate Micah Johnson standing there giving it the old LeBron James shrug. "What are you doing there, man? Let's not be stupid." So 1 game, 2 games, he had to be suspended for sure. Is that the standard they've set now? Well, maybe it'll escalate. But as we said, Pete Robertson hasn't done dirty things during his career. I think that weighed into it. The expediency of everything, he admitted to it. He said, I did something wrong. I think a lot of that went into the justice, Reed. So I think 1 game is probably in the big scheme of things, probably okay.
Yeah, I was trying to explain to Dorothy, and then I showed her the clip. Because Dorothy pretends to be. I'm a Winnipeg Blue Bomber fan. That's her team.
Okay.
And so I said, you got to go see what this guy did to your boy Zach Collaros, and she was like, oh my gosh, because I saw. Like, I think it was Michael Balls going off, like, oh, this is the standard now, and he's been kind of running. I don't know if you have thoughts.
Nobody ever listens to Michael Ball.
Okay, that's fine.
You can ignore him completely. He's gone right off the deep end the last couple of weeks.
Okay, so that's I'm reading the room correctly here from the States. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
In terms of the Labor Day Classic, because I know Winnipeg could come in and kind of clean the clock out of, Saskatchewan here. I think it was like 14-2, or I can't remember what the stats were. Like, good to see a little bit more balance in the force here with the Saskatchewan winning at home, not getting embarrassed.
That helps. And when you say embarrassed, they were certainly embarrassed in Montreal against the Alouettes. They were so flat, Reed. We were starting to wonder if Craig Dickinson had any say over that team, if he could inspire them as the head coach. And we were starting to wonder about the future of everybody. What are they doing wrong? They were totally flat. And I know that everybody says you can't use travel as an excuse in pro sports. But remember, they had gone from Regina to the East Coast for a touchdown Atlantic. Their next game was in Vancouver for a road game. Then they came home and played Ottawa. They beat Ottawa. And 5 days later, we're playing in Montreal, which are basically three of the toughest road trips in the Canadian Football League, three that you can imagine. Nobody's ever gone through that. And the fact that they lost those three road games is kind of easily explained. Plus, they weren't getting very good quarterbacking, right? I've never been, not that I hate Mason Fine, but he's just not a good enough quarterback to be a starter in the Canadian Football League.
He's fine.
Right. That's what we say. But right from training camp, I've been touting and taking heat for touting Jake Dolegala. He just, right at training camp, he looked great. He could throw the football. He could run the football. He makes good decisions. The zip he throws on the football, and he can see. He's 6'7", which is unusual for a pro quarterback. But he can see over defenders. So that opens up their offense, and they've done so much better with him at the controls. You can see the entire team has been inspired, offense, defense, special teams, just because now they have a quarterback who can win football games for them. Yes, they still got a good defense. Yes, they're playing pretty well on special teams, but now they can do things on offense, and it's just spread throughout the entire team.
Yeah, because that's the thing is it felt like, Trevor Harris goes down and like the world's ending, and Mason, like, so you're saying you maybe expected this with Jake Delgado. Like, is this coming as a surprise in the Saskatchewan market, or is this? Or, I mean, are we kind of rallying here? What's the thought process?
There are some people who say they knew it all along. I'm going to say I knew it all along, right? Of course I'm going to. I've been taking heat for it. We do a radio show here on CGME and CKOM that I've been touting him. And when he played badly as a relief quarterback after Mason Fine got hurt in Montreal, oh my goodness, the phone calls were coming in. Davis, you're an idiot. How dare you think you know more than the coaches? And I go, okay, well, let's see how he does with a week of practice under his belt. And then when he prepared and beat your BC Lions, which was a pretty impressive showing after a week of practice, basically his first start of the season, his second CFL start, he's just taken over. He's got this shucks confidence. He's Craig Dickinson says he's charismatic, and we look in our notebooks afterwards and say he didn't say anything charismatic, but he says the players all like him, and you can see they're responding to him. So from training camp, a few of us, maybe that group is growing, saying we thought Dolegala could do it. I'm on the record of saying it all the way through the season. Mason Fine can't do it. They say he's 5'10". I'm 5'8". I look him eye to eye. So he's not big enough to play in this game. Like, he got better and better as he went along, but he's still not going to win you very many games as a quarterback. He's a placeholder. And it did look like disaster when Trevor Harris went down. Now I don't know what's the future for Trevor Harris, right? Can he come back from this injury? He had a bone broken like in 5 places in his knee. So that's a pretty serious injury that he had surgery on. And will he come back? Can he come back? They're paying him $500,000 a year. Maybe you just say, listen, it's time to move on, and we'll get Jake Dolegala, who's playing very well. He'll be our quarterback of right now and of the future.
It really did feel like Saskatchewan was kind of a dumpster fire here. I mean, even 3 weeks ago. I mean, it's really remarkable. I mean, I know it's like week to week on here, and everyone freaks out. The season's a marathon, and games don't matter until Labor Day and everything else. But it is remarkable the turnaround they've had in the last few weeks. Because I think, I mean, even comments I was seeing on Twitter calling for Dickinson's job, and we're like, we got to have wholesale changes following the season.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about that, and we looked things up. The Riders have never hired anybody mid-season unless they've only had 0 or 1 wins. So at that time they were like 4-5, right? They started the season 3-1, ended up 4-5, and playing Mason Fine. We were wondering, why are you making a decision like that? And you were starting to wonder about Craig Dickinson's football acumen, right? How can he not see that this team isn't performing under Mason Fine? So Mason Fine's injury, I never want anybody to be hurt. Of course not. That's their career. But it's become a blessing for them because they were forced to use Dalagala, and it's changed things around. Now, all of a sudden, I just wrote a column last week in the Regina Leader Post saying suddenly this team is following his direction, following Craig Dickinson's direction, that they're inspired by what's going on. That short kickoff recovery on the game-opening play against Winnipeg at the Labor Day Classic. Things that are now working for them. Their defense is playing as well as it's played all season. The offense now has a spark. So Craig Dickinson now is firmly in control of this football team. There's no way in the world he's getting fired this season. At the end of the year, they'll look at it. If he gets his team into the playoffs and has a little bit of success, then he's probably back. And along with Jeremy O'Day, the general manager, there's no reason to get rid of guys who are putting a team into the playoffs and look inspired. They look pretty good these days.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. The Dalagala thing of it, I don't know. With Trevor Harris going down, like, how bad were you feeling about the Riders season kind of when all that happened?
Well, right away we knew that Trevor Harris hadn't been great, but you could tell that the team was taking on his characteristics. He was becoming the leader. He had led a comeback. I can't even remember who they played, but earlier in the season he led a fourth quarter comeback. He took the team by its bootstraps and hauled it along with him, and you could see that the team was rallying around him. They believed in him. It's the first time I've really dealt with Trevor Harris, and watching him from afar, I always thought, he seems like he's one of these, paper warriors or something who stands up and seems tough, but he is tough. And I was watching that firsthand, and I realized why his teammates liked him and why the media liked him, because he stands up to people. He's mature, and he was a leader on this football team. When he went down, it looked like disaster, and that was but the disaster was the coaching decision to go with Mason Fine. We said they can't go with Mason Fine. They really can't. They did, and they stuck with him. They lost 4 of his 5 starts. And you're thinking, why are they doing this? What is possessing them to start Mason Fine? So disaster was awaiting them, and that's where they were headed, Reed. You're absolutely right. They were headed down the drain until Mason Fine got hurt, and now they're the team that everybody's talking about, what seems to be rising with a bullet, right?
Well, because, there was I think for the last couple of seasons, and, discipline issues, and, we, like you were talking with the Garrett Marinos of it all, and there's kind of been, I don't know, them and the Elks, a little bit of like, there's this funk going on in the locker room. I don't know if that's correct or not. So you're saying here with Dalagala's leadership, and maybe they're getting this turned around? Yeah,
you can tell that they respect the guy. They have faith in him. Players handicap a team better than anybody does. You and I can look at a roster and say, it looks okay, it looks all right. These are good players. A player can look at it and say, look at the leaders we've got on this team. Look at the people we have. Look at the talent we have. They know best. And they know best. They could tell. They just weren't playing for Mason Fine. They know that they have a chance now with Jake Dalagala, and he hasn't let them down. He's made some amazing passes. Yes, sometimes he's way off target, but the ability to throw deep spreads out the defenses, right? Because they now have to worry about it. That gives them another threat. Now they see that he can run a little bit too, so now you have to watch for that. And the way he can zip passes, Reed, when you watch, the defensive back will kind of turn in coverage and say, the ball should be coming, and it's already zipped by him. So rather than a knockdown or an interception, it's already a completion in the receiver's hands. That's how much zip he has on the football. And players love that, right? Samuel Emelis and some of these guys, Tevin Jones, who we didn't think were going to have great seasons, are suddenly, among the top receivers. Sean Baines Jr., look at the receptions these guys have made. And look at the catches they've made for Dalagala. It's like watching the Bombers receivers. Remember when Drew Brown went in, and the way they always play for Zach Collaros as well. The catches they make, they don't drop the catches that have to be made because they're in the moment. They're really inspired by what's going on, and you can see that now with the Rough Riders throughout the entire roster.
So the Banjo Bowl here coming up this weekend, going to be hot. What are you expecting here? You know, obviously Mosaic loud and everything. I saw, and I want to get your thoughts on Cody as well. But you know, Cody kind of trying to play in IG, was it last weekend? And you know, it's loud there. But what are you looking forward to this weekend?
Oh boy, this could be a vicious game, right? Even though everybody seems to have made peace a little bit, we were talking about how everybody's backtracked a little bit and calmer minds have prevailed. But I still think that this could be a vicious football game. And you've seen what the Bombers do after somebody wrongs them or somebody beats them. They bounce back as well as any team in the CFL. So I should say I'm scared for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, but it's part of football to go into somebody's backyard after beating them and saying, oh, here we go. Winnipeg is going to be pumped up, ready to play. It's going to be loud. It's going to be hot. It's a midday game, which they haven't really played many of those this year, so it's going to be a little different for the Rough Riders too. And I don't know. I didn't think they were going to win last week, to be honest, but I can't see how the Riders can win in Winnipeg this week. I know that there's going to be one angry football team there, angry fans. Some of the media are helping pump that up. It's part of the rivalry, but it's going to be a very tough game for the Rough Riders to win, and I don't know if they can.
Obviously, our time in covering this league is incredibly short. Is this normal heat kind of going into this? Because it, like I said, I mean, it feels obviously the headbutt and all that stuff. But I mean, that game was contentious even before that.
Oh, yeah. It always is. It's a great middle of the season rivalry. You know, in 2004, they started it as the Banjo Bowl because former kicker, you've heard that story, Troy Westwood called Saskatchewan fans banjo picking inbreds, and all of us laughed. And Westwood says, I've got family from Saskatchewan who loves that. But the Riders hated it, right? They won't let anybody associated with the Riders call it the Banjo Bowl. They call it the Labor Day rematch, which is also a misnomer because the game really isn't on Labor Day. It's the day before. So it's become, but because of that, ever since 2004, it's become this home-and-home rivalry right in the middle of the season. They're geographical rivals anyway, right? Because they're close. They're 6 hours apart by highway. And that's close in Canada, right? So they've always despised each other. Winnipeg has had Saskatchewan's number for the last little while in all games, especially in playoff games. So there is that rivalry. You know, for a few years it goes one way, then it goes back the other way. So it's a tough spot for anybody to win, and it's a tough spot for anybody to sweep this series, although Winnipeg's done it because Winnipeg's been so strong the last couple of years. So you do look forward to this one. When we say that the CFL season starts at Labor Day, well, those other games are important, but boy, they just become magnified now. And that heated rivalry you talk about, this is where you really see it.
Well, I just like it because if Winnipeg had come in and just beat the doors off Saskatchewan last week, it's like it's really hard to get up for that, right? And last year the Riders, were not a good team, and I don't know if I still don't know if they're a good team or not this year, but they're certainly playing better, like you said. Before we get out of here, thoughts on your boy Cody Fajardo in Montreal? I just want to get he was on last week. I felt bad. I've decided it's like Alexander Hollins comes on the show and then goes out and has like 2 touchdowns. Stephen Dunbar had a great week last week. He was on the show recently. Like, I think quarterbacks though, Macaulay Bethel-Thompson lost in the USFL after coming on our show. They were undefeated. Ben Holmes won a Grey Cup after not coming on our show, and now Cody Fajardo played a really poor game. What did you make of him?
It's good to know that you and Cody have made peace.
We have twice. Yeah, he's been on twice.
That he doesn't block you. I think he's blocked everybody in Saskatchewan because he doesn't take criticism very well. That's one of his weaknesses. He doesn't like being picked on it anyway. And he started the season so well. He and Jason Moss looked like it was a real good dynamic. But teams figure out how to stop Cody. It seems like Chris Jones was one of the best at that. How to take away his first read. Just make sure you take away his first read, and that's what teams are doing now. So he's not real good at finding the second and third guys. He starts running too quickly, and that's what seems to be happening again. And he's desperate. He wants to make a play so badly that play at the end of the game. We saw that for a long time in Saskatchewan, that he tries to make a play that you just have to eat it sometimes or wait and see if you get one more opportunity. So it seems to be going the way we thought it would. Good for him for the way the season started, and it looked like they were going to be a strong team, but it's kind of, I don't know, what do we know? Maybe we did know that this thing was going to happen in Montreal, and it seems to be the way it's headed. If they can turn around, good for them, because they have a new owner, they have fans who like to watch that team, it'd be great if everybody's competitive, but sometimes teams slip. And I think Montreal, we picked them to be near the bottom of the pack early on this season, and they defied that logic early on, but it looks like they're falling into line the way we expected them to play.
Last thing for me here. So then who do you see in the East? I mean, obviously Toronto with a bullet, but then if the Ticats are kind of hot garbage, and so are the Red Blacks.
Yeah, there's not much out there, right? Ottawa's badly coached. Montreal should be the second place team, but I'm kind of a Taylor Powell fan. I like the way the kid's reacting. He's one of those guys. We talked a lot this year about quarterbacks who have it. You can see a guy step onto the field. Arbuckle never had it, right? Nick Arbuckle never did. McLeod Bethel Thompson, they're never really sold on. But you watch Chad Kelly step in. He's got it, right? And we're watching Jake Dolegala step in. He's got it. These are the guys who look like CFL quarterbacks. They don't look lost. They're confident. They can run. They can throw on the run. And I think Powell is like that. I know he's taken some missteps and probably will as a rookie, but I think he's got that future ahead of him. And that's why I think that Hamilton, especially with Scott Milanovic calling plays now, he seems to have changed their offense a little bit. He's a very good quarterbacks coach too. Is going to help that team. They got rid of a bad apple in Duke Williams. It looks like they've cut him. He was a pretender when he was here. He's a pretender everywhere he's been. So getting rid of those guys, those are good moves, and I think it can help the Tiger Cats. If I were to bet right now, I would say the Tiger Cats, who looked like they were going to be horrible and maybe fire Orlando Steinauer, their head coach, now to me are the second best team in the East.
Well, Jason Hussey will be happy to hear about that. He's had to live through a couple of sad games here. Darrell, I appreciate it. Like I said, if we don't see you before November, we'll certainly see you then, but appreciate you hopping on.
Anytime, Reed. Good to see you.
Well, I think I was actually on your show when Dave Campbell filled in, I think, many moons ago. I think it was in the winter here, but you were on last year. We have Morley Scott back on. Now kind of one of the hottest teams in the CFL, the Elks. How are you doing, sir?
I'm very good, thank you. It's good to be back.
It's good. It's been a weird season. Like I said, we've had Dave on, I think, twice. Welfare check, kind of everything going on. How are you doing? I mean, I know it was a loss, crazy come from behind, but it's certainly a different season than it was about a month ago.
Oh man, things changed a month ago. The Elks had the bye week, and they made the changes to their offense. They switched out the offensive coordinators, and they made the change at quarterback. And Jarius Jackson calling the plays and Trey Ford executing the plays is. It's just been a total turn of events for the Elks. He has lit the spark to the offense and started a bit of a fire. And they've been, I think they were averaging about 17 points a game for the first 8 games. And then when he came in, they've been averaging close to 30 points a game now. So they're 2-2 through that stretch, which is about where kind of people thought they would be through the season. Unfortunately, they had that 0-9 start, and the hole might be too big for them to dig out of, but they're going to do their best the rest of the way.
What's the fan base they're thinking now? Because I know it was tough, and I know before Victor left, he was trying to do a lot, and obviously, it's an impossible task with a losing team to try to kind of rebuild that fan support. But what's it like now?
It's better. People are excited again, and people are anxious to watch a player. I mean, Trey Ford has really hit the fan base hard. They're upset that they waited until that deep into the season to start him. But that's another story of why that happened, I guess. But it has happened now. The fans are excited again. I mean, they know they can go to the ballpark and they might see something special, like they did last week in Calgary with that run he had, which was just unbelievable. So the fan base is kind of getting back on board a little bit. But this season's going to be tough. The rest, getting out of the hole they're in, is going to be tough. They pretty much got to run the table or go 5-1 or so in their last 6 games to get into to stay in the playoff conversation. And it still won't be easy to get that crossover spot. But it's night and day. I mean, doing interviews, talking to fans, doing the show that I do every week on the Elks, doing the pregame shows, the postgame shows is so different when the team's winning a few games and everybody is in a little better position and a little better mood. So it's been good around here for the last month, and let's hope they can keep winning some games to keep everybody entertained and interested for the last part of the season.
Well, yeah, I mean, it really felt like this obligation versus like this is something that we're enjoying doing. I mean, it has to feel like night and day different than it was. I just can't imagine, it's 3.5, 4 years here of kind of going through all of this.
Yeah, it's been tough. And you're right. It's not just this season. I mean, you add in, last season with 4 wins, the season before that with 3 wins, haven't made the playoffs since think it was 2018 last time they made the playoffs. Throw in a year without football because of COVID. The name change, a few of the changes that were that they've made in other areas, and the fans just weren't happy, and nobody was happy around the team. But you can really see that turning a little bit. And Victor started it. Victor did some really good things that brought the fan base kind of back into the picture a little bit and made them feel like they were involved and like they mattered. Now the team and Victor have parted ways, and they're going to try and continue on that. They still have to work on that, and they still have to keep engaging the fans and still keep them part of the program.
In terms of, like you said, fan base upset maybe that they didn't see Trey before, week 10. And when CFL had tweeted that out Sunday, this is, most rushing yards or whatever since Michael Riley and all that stuff. I said, this is a reminder. It took 10 weeks for Chris Jones to play Trey Ford, which is so weird to me because, we saw him last year and, I know the injury and all that. Like, what is your understanding of why it took nearly half the season to see him?
Well, Chris Jones kept telling us that he just wasn't playing well enough in practice. And that's, when it really started, about the month before he got the start, I noticed one thing that Trey was staying out after practice. Trey was working by himself after practice. And I tape a podcast once a week, and we go up into a booth or into a suite after practice, and my guest and we talk up there, but it's got windows and it overlooks the field. And on this day, for about 3 or 4 straight weeks, Trey was out there for an hour by himself. He had the targets set up. He was, taking the imaginary snap, running the route. He was rolling out to the left, rolling out to the right, and he was trying to make the passes. And it just seemed like he not that he wasn't working hard, but he started to do the extra stuff. And I think that caught the coach's eye, and I think he became a better practice player. And, everyone has their ideas about practice players and game players, right? It matters when the lights come on how you play, not so much how you play in practice. But practice is important in football, and you have to catch the coach's eye, and you have to make sure that he's confident in the way you can play in practice and translate that into the game. But Trey really worked hard in that last month, and then the change came. He got the start, and so I think it's a combination of maybe they did wait too long, but maybe they waited long enough instead, and maybe they waited long enough so he was ready to go and he was in a position to be successful, because he was successful right off the hop. I mean, his first game against the best team in the league, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, got the team out to a 22-0 lead in the first half. They weren't able to hang on to it and get the win, but then they reeled off 2 straight wins after that, and should have won in Calgary on Labor Day. So it's been going well for him, and I'd like to believe that maybe Chris Jones, he's a little old school, right? And he waited. He wanted to make sure that Trey was in the right position to be successful. And it appears at least that part of it is true. And that's how it's worked out. Maybe he could have started him a couple of weeks earlier. Maybe not. Maybe the former OC, Stephen McAdoo, was not on board with making the change. And if he's not on board, then the head coach really can't, shouldn't be overruling his offensive coordinator for certain things. So maybe that was part of it too. But maybe we'll find out in the future why it went this way, but it went this way, and we can't change it. So I think people are now just looking forward and hoping Trey can keep going the way he's been going.
Yeah, it's just crazy to me because obviously he's still, we've had on lots of you guys, from the CFL talking, and it's such a challenging game it is to learn, right? And it takes a couple years. And I think that's where, they were hoping maybe Cornelius, okay, we're getting into year 3, right? And I was like, when he had 4 wins under his belt, like, this is crazy, all this stuff. But Trey just has this crazy athleticism that can't be denied, I guess. And they had, we were talking with Dunnigan on one of the broadcasts, like, if you can't figure out the game, keep running until you do. And like, he certainly can. And I don't, eventually that might catch up to him, right? If his athleticism can't kind of outrun that, but it does. What do you see when you see him on the field? Cause it does seem like he's at a different level in terms of even as athletic as Cornelius was, being able to scramble.
Yeah, he's more athletic than Cornelius was. He runs in a different way, right? He can bob and weave and cut and do different things. Cornelius, he was more, he could take the angles, and when he got room, he took off, and he got a lot of great yardage that way and was very good at it. I think, just staying with Cornelius for a second, I think what enticed the coaching staff and a lot of other people about him was just the toolbox, right? It's pretty tough to find a quarterback who can throw like that, who's 6'5" and 225 pounds, right? Like, that's an NFL-sized quarterback right there. But he wasn't able to get the job done offensively. The team was struggling offensively, so they had to make the changes. And Trey comes in, and he's learning, and you can see him going through the progression sometimes, which is good. A lot of times the running quarterbacks, they'll take the snap, they'll look for their main guy, maybe get to their second target, and if they can't find something, then they tuck the ball and run. But Trey seems to go through the progressions a little bit more than some of the other running quarterbacks do, right? So I like that in him, and that shows me that he's only going to get better as he moves forward. So and don't forget, he hasn't played a lot of football. I mean, this last week on Labor Day was his 7th CFL start in a year and a half as a pro. He played the year before that. He played a shortened season in U Sports because of coming back from COVID. The year before that, he didn't play at all. So he, in the last 4 or 5 years, he hasn't played a lot of football, hasn't been in a lot of football games. And I think that kind of tells me that he's going to even continue to get better because he's going to get more experience and he's going to start to learn, to make the reads and to play in different situations. So I'm looking forward to seeing him grow.
It's like the reverse Trey Lance, or where Trey Ford hasn't, we've all been, if you don't live in the States, been tracking that ad nauseum here the last week, the Trey Lance to Dallas and all that stuff. Because when you talk about that, where the skill set, I guess, because that to me is more of like the Dustin Crum, where I can't make the pass, like I'm running. Where, like you said, it does feel like Trey, the game is slowly getting to the point where it's slowing down to him a little bit more, where he is able to play versus, like you said, just, I can't make that. Okay, immediately running and trying to scramble.
Yeah, I don't know if it's only me, but the way I would compare those two, Dustin comes more like a bull in a china shop, right? He's straight ahead. He'll just make holes. And run guys over and get the yardage. But Trey's a little different. He's kind of like a running back sometimes. He'll dipsy doodle, he'll cut, and the play on the Labor Day game, it was a 33-yard gain, and I studied it and went back and tried to figure out the distance. The field is 65 feet wide. I was trying to find the distance if there's a standard number between the numbers on the field and the hash marks, everything, but I couldn't quite get it. But I estimate between dropped back about 21 yards from getting the snap, then got back to the line of scrimmage, and then ended up getting 33 yards on the gain. But while he was doing that, he also ran to the left side of the field and then ran back across to the right side of the field. So my guess was about 103 to 107 yards, somewhere in there that he ran. It's just an incredible – and he got touched once. And he slid. He could have gotten more, but he slid. So that just shows you what it is. And I was talking to him yesterday about it, and he said it was a play we botched. We didn't line up properly on the play, and that's kind of why it opened up things for him to run like that, because that certainly wasn't the planned play, but things went wrong from the snap, and he adjusted and adapted and turned nothing into something.
Yeah, it feels like that improvisation is there, and we've watched Calgary a lot this season, and Jake Mayer, and I think people were expecting big things from him, right? And last year and taking over, and we had him on last year because I said, man, this is going to be the new Bo Levi. I want to hitch my wagon to him and kind of all that stuff. He does not. I mean, I know they came back and won, and I want to talk about that next. It doesn't seem like Jake Mayer's had a very fun season. Watching him on the sidelines, watching his interviews, very frustrated. We're watching Trey. It does seem like there's a joy here of the sport and of kind of improvising and kind of doing what he's doing.
Yeah, well, I think Trey's happy because he's getting a chance to play, right? Nobody likes being on the sidelines, right? And as far as Jake Mayer goes, he had the last half of last season to play. He started this season, and they haven't started very well. I mean, that was their 4th win on Labor Day when they beat the Elks, so they're in a tough position to make the playoffs as well. So, Trey's happy because he's playing. I think Jake's unhappy because they're not winning. And he's putting up some good yards. I don't know if he still leads the league. I know going into last week he led the league in passing yards, but he had a great fourth quarter against the Elks on Monday. Just razor sharp, just zipping it in and making some great passes. Got some great help from his receivers too. But it's I think they're in totally different situations. There's really the bar. I mean, the expectations on Trey are not really there, but the expectations on Jake were there because, they traded a Hall of Famer or let a Hall of Famer go via free agency / trade to make room for him. And I think that puts a little bit more pressure on a guy to come in. Trey's coming in and replacing the guy who's 0-8, so it's a little different, right? And he's done He's done whatever he can. He's done pretty much everything everybody's asked him to. We maybe saw hiccups in the Labor Day game, and Chris Jones talked about that to us on our post game show. Just the fact that we got to get the ball out of his hands a little better. They don't want to rely on him running 135 yards every game, right? 50, 60, 70s right in the nice good wheelhouse because he can do that. He's got to get more yards. He had a 300-yard game, but other than that, all his games have been under 200 yards. So he's got to get. They have to get a better passing game with him in the lineup.
Yeah, I want the buddy cop isn't the right wording, but kind of like you have the old sergeant and then the young lieutenant coming in here with Chris Jones and Trey Ford. Like I don't know if it's a joyous, relationship or contentious. Like I want to know. I want like kind of a ESPN 30 for 30 on that, of like what's going on, because I do think that maybe they're not, and I think maybe Cornelius yeah, like I'll do with it. Yeah, coach. That where maybe Trey is a little bit more like I don't want to play wide receiver. I want to do what I want to do. I don't want to be kind of a Kyle Loxley in that way. Like I don't know. I want to know more about the relationship.
Yeah, it is. It's got to be kind of a strange relationship when you take all three of them in: Chris Jones, Taylor Cornelius, and Trey Ford. And I mean, there's never been any outward signs of displeasure from anybody. Nobody's said anything. Everybody said the right things. Obviously, Trey's upset he's not playing, right? As any quarterback should be, or any player should be. If you're not in the lineup, you shouldn't be happy, right? You should be working on your game to get better and get in the lineup. And it's kind of weird though, because you always talk to coaches about their guys, right? They didn't bring him in. That's the case for Taylor Cornelius. He was here when Chris Jones arrived. Jimmy Elizondo and Block Sunderland brought him in. Jones kept him, liked him enough last year to sign him to a contract extension, but he also drafted Trey Ford. So Trey Ford's kind of Chris's guy. And not only did he draft him, he traded away the first overall pick in a series of trades so that he could maneuver himself to get a couple of picks in the first round, including Trey Ford, which he took 8th overall. He also got Enoch Makonza, I believe was 2nd or 3rd overall pick. So he likes Trey Ford. There's a misconception out there that Chris Jones doesn't like Trey Ford or Chris Jones doesn't like Canadian quarterbacks, which is just ridiculous. Coaches like quarterbacks that win. Doesn't matter what their birth certificate is, right? So he likes Trey Ford. He drafted Trey Ford. He made a move to get him and gave up assets to get him. So clearly he knows what he can do. And when he drafted him, he called him the best player he's seen in space in his time in the Canadian Football League. And that's pretty high praise. And he last week, he likened him to Doug Flutie, even higher praise, right? And, obviously, let's not get carried away. Obviously, he's got a long way to go to get even close to that. But some of the things he can do when he's got the football are pretty incredible. And again, we saw that in the game on Monday.
Yeah, it's just I like Coach Jones, and we had him on. I think it was after the winter meetings last year. I think he was too busy, had too many calls, so he did it with us. And he was down in LA scouting at one of the bowls or something. I mean, it feels like he's in 24/7. And I obviously never spoken to the man, and came across very well to me, right, and gregarious and happy and hardworking. And so it's been a weird season watching the Elks because it does not seem like he's a very fan favorite right now with everything going on.
Yeah, he's not. But perception is not reality, though, I believe, with Chris Jones. He's got people think he's that gruff, short-tempered, whatever kind of guy, but he's not that. I mean, he's been so patient with us on our post-game shows for a year and a half now, and I mean, he's hasn't won a lot of football games in the last year and a half, right? But he comes on the post-game show and he talks about the game and what went wrong and what he needs to correct, and he's very patient. He does things, in the media every day. He's asked to talk, and every day he talks. He's done marketing things. I'm sure you saw the mean tweets, right? He's done marketing things for the team, whatever they want. He does. He's not the guy that people perceive him to be. And like everybody says to me, oh, how's it dealing with Chris Jones again? And I said, it's great. I mean, he was good to me in 14 and 15 when he was a coach here, and he's been nothing but spectacular with us now. I mean, you'd think the position he's in, you'd get a lot of 2 and 3 word answers sometimes, but I can only count one time when I asked him a question and I got a 1 word answer, and that's probably because I answered the question in the question, and he just agreed with me, right? So, yeah, he's a smart football man too. I mean, you talked about him. When you talked to him, and I remember listening to that interview. You talked to him. He was out scouting. That's all he does in the offseason. I mean, when he left Edmonton at the end of last season, he was driving home to South Pittsburgh, Tennessee. And on the way, he stopped at about 50 schools to talk to coaches, to talk to athletes, to watch any kind of scrimmages that were going on. And he was getting his book ready because he was determined, because of the issues with the XFL and the USFL bringing athletes to the CFL now, and guys are opting, in the States to stay home and play. He said, we got to find a different way to scout, and we got to find different players, and we got to find those guys who have fallen through the cracks. And I think he found a few of those guys over the last year and a half, and that's what he's dedicated to, and that's all he does in the off season. He just scouts and watches film. I mean, he's people call themselves a football guy, but I mean, like, he's a football guy. That's all he does. I mean, he likes the bye week because he doesn't have to go to practice. It means he can watch more film, right? That's pretty much Chris Jones to a T.
That's funny. I appreciate that anecdote. That's actually very interesting. And I don't know. I think, like you said, I think he gets a bad rap with that. Kind of to round out the conversation, obviously, these were big wins or big games, right? The home at home, Calgary, and then back here now. And, we had left to go to dinner. I mean, I watched the first half and I thought, man, Trey's got this. I think they were.
Dinner?
Well, my wife's going back to starting school again this week. I said we got to get the last hurrah here, last happy hour before the summer ends. Yeah, we're watching. I'm watching the group chat, and we're literally at beer tasting. And I got the phone up on here. We're watching overtime, or coming down didn't go to overtime, but coming down the pike. What did you make of that, Calgary coming back, and then obviously here the game again this weekend against Calgary?
Yeah, heartbreaking finish to the game. I mean, I drove home from Calgary on Tuesday morning, and I sat down and watched the game again. And the last 5 minutes are tough to watch from an Elks perspective. I mean, even the last 3 minutes. I mean, they got the lead, and they allowed Calgary to have a 70-yard drive to score a touchdown. And then they come out, and I think it's with like about 2.5 minutes to go, and the Elks go 2 and out. Right. And all they needed was a first down. They probably could have ended up either running out the clock on Calgary or at least forcing them to kick a field goal instead of keep going, for the touchdown. So they allow the 70-yard touchdown. Then they go 2 and out. And then the Calgary's offense comes back out and they get an 83-yard touchdown drive after that. And that's all in the last 3 minutes. And on that drive, there was a 3rd and 6, and they were able to convert it and keep the offense on the field. So there's a lot that went wrong in the last 3 minutes of that football game, and it's pretty tough. I mean, it's heartbreaking for the Elks for the position they're in. I mean, that game with the home game coming up and the excitement that's been generated again by Trey Ford would have had a pretty good. We're probably still going to have a pretty good attendance for the game coming up on Saturday, but would have been a lot better if they had hung on and won that football game, and would have put them in 4th place, technically with the tiebreaker over Calgary, would have put them a game back of a playoff spot to cross over. So it was a pretty important game and a pretty heartbreaking loss. And Chris Jones on our postgame show after said maybe the toughest loss he's had in his CFL career because of the situation that the team was in.
I guess last question for me, because Jones is like the defensive guy, right? And here Trey came out and played great, had a historic night, and these highlights were posted, and I mean, he's had them here for weeks now, but to have him play and have the team be gelling finally on offense, we've been like dying for here all season, and then have the defense kind of fall apart because they had kept the team in certain games because of defense before last night or this week, whatever it was.
Yeah, the defense has played well, and the offense hasn't reciprocated in a lot of games. This time it went the other way. And although the offense did kind of struggle in the 4th quarter, they didn't get a lot of first downs. And again, you go back, you get just a couple more first downs, you probably run the clock out, right? And Calgary doesn't get the opportunity for that comeback. So, or at least they get their first touchdown with maybe, a minute and a half to go instead of 2.5 minutes to go, right? So, but the defense, I think, a little bit tired in the 4th quarter. Because they were on the field a lot in the 4th quarter. But, I mean, you got to be ready for those situations. The offense could have been better in the 4th, but I think they did their job scoring 31 points earlier in the game. The defense kind of let them down, I think, in the last 3 minutes.
Well, I appreciate it. It should be a good game this weekend. Exciting. I know we had that, like I said, circled on. We do our little weekly recaps now and previews and talking, and these 2 big games. So hopefully you can kind of even out the series there. But I appreciate it. Certainly better terms to be able to talk to you right now than it would have been maybe a month ago. Dave had to carry that burden of coming on with what was like 0-7 or whatever it was.
Yeah, it's funny, and I guess I got a lot of good friends and some colleagues, and during that trip, you okay? People kept checking in on me. Are you okay? Are you okay? Because you can hear the disappointment and the disdain in our voices sometimes. Through that 0-9 stretch. But I'll tell you what, the first 2 wins were pretty fun. It was good to go to work and have fun again and really enjoy it instead of going to work and dreading it. Like, how are they going to lose this game, right? And they did everything from, drop balls to bad passes to bad defense to giving up a rouge in the final minute to building up a big lead and blowing it. They found every way possible to lose a football game, and then before they finally turned it around and got a couple wins. So, yeah, it's been a lot more fun around here when you're talking football in the last month.
Well, I appreciate it. Go watch practice. Thanks for your time, and it means a lot, so thank you.
Anytime. Glad to be here. Enjoy watching the show and listening to it when I get a chance.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, we finally got this production done. We got it connected here via Zoom. Tim Baines, how about them Sens? How's it going?
Yeah, hockey soon. It's going to be quite the switch going from football and sitting outside of the stadium, I guess, to sitting in an arena. Yeah, how about them Sens? How about them Red Blacks?
Hey, Red Blacks. No, I am very excited for Kraken preseason here at the end of September. Very, very excited. I think our first game's the 28th. So, Red Blacks, I mean, I wanted to have you on. I think you came on earlier in the season, either preseason or beginning of the season. Red Blacks not as hot now as maybe they would have been when we had talked before. What's your take on the team right now?
I think probably when we talked earlier in this season, we talked probably about hope. And that this was a team that seemed ready and poised to turn it around from winning 3 games, 4 games. And certainly it looked that way early in the season. They're 1-3, potentially could have won any of those losses. But then they battled back down 16 points late in the game. They beat Winnipeg in overtime. They beat Calgary in overtime. All of a sudden they're 3-3. And you're thinking, now, this is a Red Blacks team that can contend. This is a playoff team. But 5 losses later, they're in – I don't want to say they're in deep trouble yet, because it is the CFL East Division where you can get into the playoffs with less than a 500 record. But the game, Friday night's game against Hamilton, means everything, because should you lose that game to a team that's 1 game ahead of you, yes, you're 2 games behind them, but you're behind the tiebreaker. So essentially, you're 3 games behind with 6 games left. All 6 of those games against teams with winning records. It's a pretty. It would seem like an almost impossible task, and coaches hate to put the must-win tagline on any game that's truly not. I mean, truly, is it must-win? Well, no, they could lose and still make the playoffs, but it sure isn't likely. So this is about as close to a must-win game as you can get. Plus, they're playing a team that played on Monday. So you're going to play a team with 3 days rest. No excuses. The Ottawa Red Blacks have to win against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Season on the line.
What's travel like from Hamilton to Ottawa?
Oh, it's a relatively easy trip.
Okay.
The Ticats would have flown in. It's a 5-hour, maybe a little more than 5-hour drive. And a very quick, less than an hour plane ride. So that's not going to affect the Ticats. The Ticats will come in Thursday.
Because I've seen controversy about the 3 days here with the 3-day rest or whatever. I mean, I have seen that come up. So is that? I mean, what do you make of that? Is that? I mean, CFL is always going to have weird scheduling quirks like that.
I think it would be certainly worse if you were changing time zones, if you were the Ticats, and let's say you had to go west or you're a Western team coming east. Like anytime you have to change your habits a bit, it throws you off a bit as well. I think it's just tough. At this point in the season, the players are beat up. Very few of them are 100% healthy right now. So when you go out and you play at high intensity, levels of high intensity, and then really with 1 day of full practice, you're asked to go out in the football game, or out in the football field again, it's tough on the body, especially when you get past the halfway point of the season. So that should be advantage REDBLACKS. But we've said that before. They're coming off a bye week, 11 days between games. We'll see. Games that we thought they were going to win, they haven't won. And they've got to figure out a way to do it against the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
Well, they don't play particularly well at home either, right? And especially, right, Hamilton seems, I think Hussey was talking on the show about that too, that Hamilton seems to kind of have it their way with Ottawa, but at least Ottawa at home isn't particularly good. Well,
they did win that big game against Winnipeg with like the stunning victory where, again, you're down 16 points, two two-point converts, 2 touchdowns, just out of nowhere. Because, again, I think the thought was, oh, here we go again. This is the REDBLACKS team we've seen. And all of a sudden, they threw some doubt into that. They did provide that hope. But the key at home is you've got to get momentum early. And they've managed to do that, but managed to piss away victories in the second half. So how do you get momentum and follow through and finish it in the second half? And there are a lot of directions you can point your fingers in toward. Bottom line, that's a guy who started the year as a 4th-string quarterback is their starting quarterback. And I think he does provide promise and hope. And I think he shows things where he could be, and he can be a long-term starting quarterback in the CFL. He needs to put it all together. They need to get a passing attack going. They need to complement. They've had a decent running game, but they need to put a passing attack in and finish it off in the red zone. More importantly, they need to figure out a way to stop big plays on defense. They're the worst team in the CFL at giving up pass plays of more than 20 yards. You've got to prevent what they call explosives. You've got to prevent the big plays. Because if you're going to score, even if the offense goes out and scores 32 points, if they give up 33, same result.
Is Dustin Crum a good quarterback?
I believe he is. I believe he's still very much learning. He's thrown into the fire. He certainly couldn't have come into the season expecting what's happened to happen. And Jeremiah Masoli was clearly going to be the starting quarterback when he recovered from injury. Nick Arbuckle started the year as a starting quarterback because of that injury. Tyree Adams comes in. Okay, he's going to be a starting quarterback. Well, he gets a season-ending injury. So Dustin Crum has been elevated from being a guy who was in the background, not getting many reps in practice, to facing live bullets. Like he's in game situations. And I think, especially for an American quarterback coming to the CFL, it's difficult to make that transition when a lot of your learning is happening against real opposition. I think he is learning. I think he's certainly making less mistakes. He's running the ball less, which when you look at him being the leading rushing quarterback in the league, you might think, well, maybe he should run the ball more. But you also don't want your quarterback, especially when when you've got 2 of your other guys out for the season with injuries, you don't want him taking big hits. So you want to have that flexibility where he can take off and run, but you maybe want him going down, at the yard marker rather than trying to fight for 4 or 5 extra yards. So I think they need him to settle in, be more of a pocket passer, and they need to figure out a way to push the ball downfield more. Not always settling for those 5-6 yard plays.
Because I had Morley Scott also on this episode, and we were talking about Trey Ford, right? And here's someone, super athletic and running, and we came to the conclusion that, maybe Trey Ford is seeing the field maybe a little bit more than Dustin Crum. Okay, if his first read isn't there, okay, I'm scrambling, now I'm running, and maybe Trey, the game is slowed for Trey. He's had, 7 starts on his CFL career, plus playing U Sports. Like, how do you view kind of these 2 different, really athletic quarterbacks right now?
I think one of the advantages for Trey Ford, first of all, he did start at least 1 game last year. He got a full year's look at it. Another big advantage, he played Canadian University football. So he's seen, it's a big difference. And you can talk about the 3 downs to the 4 downs. You can talk about the width of the field and the length of the field. You can talk about the waggle. But the big thing, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But the big thing is, it basically is the 12th guy in the field. So when a quarterback is looking at that, when you're an American quarterback, you're not used to looking at sometimes and seeing what seems like extra people on the defense. It's a big difference to be able to read that 12th guy. It just is for a quarterback. And Trey Ford, playing Canadian University football, would be pretty used to that by now. So it's why he understands the uniqueness and the intricacies that the Canadian game brings. He's got a pretty good handle on that already. So it's just a matter of adapting to professional, what might happen different on a professional football field.
In terms of kind of the Red Blacks management and, Sean Burke and everyone there, and I know Bob Dice came in midway through last year, like, obviously the Mazzoli stuff last year, wasn't expected. Okay, it's kind of a mulligan ride, and now this year, like, is this a mulligan to get, like, how, like, how long is their leash in terms of being on the hot seat?
I think they're on the hot seat very much. I mean, I don't know how long a leash you want to give. As far, and you could look at the way the season has gone, and you could dissect almost every game. I think the last game against Edmonton wasn't very winnable. I never got a feeling they were going to win that game. It just didn't look like one of those games that they could. But you can look at almost every other game and say that was winnable. The problem with that, so the past few years, there was never hope. When the Red Blacks got behind by 10 points for 2 touchdowns, you never believed they could win the game. There just wasn't that feeling. So now they came back against Winnipeg. They won against Calgary in overtime. So now there's that feeling that they can. But hope only takes you so far as well. So it's good that you're giving your fans a better show at home. You're showing them you can win football games, at least earlier in the season. But again, so now the honeymoon with that, I think, has come to an end. Now you got to start winning football games. It's not coming close. It's coming close. There's no asterisk in the standings says the Red Blacks could have won 7 games. There's nothing. The facts are that they won 3 games. So it doesn't matter if you could lose every game in this. You could lose 10 games by 1 point. You still lost 10 games. So I think that honeymoon period, that bubble has burst, and I think they've got to win football games. And I believe they have good people in place. I would hope there's a patience on the from the ownership perspective. But at some point, you're going to get impatient. Like, you want to have that team. You want to have the outlook. You want to have the potential to go to Grey Cups. First of all, you have to make the playoffs. The Red Blacks showed in 2016 an 8-9-1 team. You just got to get into the playoffs, and then you got to peak at the right time. Again, you don't have to win more than you lose. You just got to get into the playoffs. And right now, there's a lot on the line. A win over Hamilton, and maybe there's hope. A loss, and there's going to be a lot of heads being hung, thinking it's over.
I just don't know, like I said, with everything that, playing their 4th-string quarterback now, like, what, I don't know if anyone else could have done a better job at this point. I mean, it really is an uninvented, I can't even say the word, no one wants to be in that situation. I can't even say the right word.
Yeah, I don't, I mean, who are you going to, would it be different if Jeremiah Masoli was healthy?
Well, yeah, but like, that's not Bob Dice's fault here that this is, I think they went into the same as last year. We make the move for Mazzoli. We're kind of we have our chips going in, and then it all falls apart. It's like, what the hell are you going to do?
It's a difficult situation. People would say, well, why don't you go down and look at the NFL cuts? Why can't you bring a better quarterback in, or why can't you bring a better receiver? And first of all, guys in the NFL have just been cut, aren't too anxious to leave the States, because there's still teams pick up players, as the weeks go along. There's still hope. They want an NFL opportunity. Second of all, if the guys never played in the CFL, it's not like they're going to come up here and be inserted in the lineup in week 1 and make a difference. There's not many instances of that happening. Again, it's an adjustment to the Canadian game. You've got to adjust to a new system. There's an awful lot goes into that. And often when players come up here at this point of the year, it's more towards looking at next year. They get a look at them over the course of the last month and a half. And they're looking at potential, maybe impact players or even roster players for the 2024 season. So basically, what they've got right now is what you get. They're going to have to try and win football games with the lineup they have now. And every team has injuries. Ottawa, unfortunately, lost 2 quarterbacks, and they've lost some other key players. But every team has problems. Every team's got injuries. Got to fight through that. It's part of the game, and it doesn't hold as an excuse. You've got to. They say next man up.
In terms of Hamilton coming in here, also, injury bug, and they're not a particularly good team either. What are you looking forward to in this matchup? Because it is kind of like two desperate teams here coming in and trying to, eat. It's like in the Batman when the Joker breaks the pool cue and throws it out okay, someone's got to come out of this.
Yeah, you want to see, obviously, that desperation from both teams. You would hope that one of them is not going to roll over, and you'd hope to see an entertaining game. And I know both teams obviously put a high level of importance. One team wants to put another game of separation, and the other team's clinging to is on life support right now. And a loss for Ottawa again would be disastrous. So you'd hope both teams are on their first string quarterback is out, so they're on. They found alternatives. And we'll see what Hamilton does again with a very, very short turnaround in between games, and Ottawa coming off the huge rest. We'll see if that makes a difference.
Other storylines you're tracking this season. It's scary here when you think about the East and kind of whoever. Let's say it is Montreal and Ottawa going in, and then you go in and Toronto just kicks your teeth in anyway. What are you kind of looking forward to here?
Sorry, I'm lost.
It's just story. What are you tracking here? I guess what's your thoughts on the East Division as a whole here? Because, like I said, I feel like it's Toronto above all. Even if we get through the semifinals, it's going to be a tough sled to hoe here.
Well, we've really seen the emergence of Chad Kelly. It certainly was a question mark at the beginning of the season, really largely unproven. But I guess they're pretty happy with his performance, doling out the biggest contract in the CFL. So you look at it doesn't end with the quarterback. Toronto's got talent all over the place. I think in particular on defense, they've got some of the league's best players. So we'll see. Montreal. Yeah, Montreal. We'll see. I haven't been overly impressed with the Alouettes. I think they played well. They're certainly not on the level with Toronto right now. But again, this is the CFL. All you need is a spot among those final 6 teams. That's all you need. And then you maybe got to go win 2 games to get to the final, and then you never know. So the Argonauts are the defending champions, arguably the best team in the CFL right now. But I'm sure there are a few other CFL teams that think they have a pretty good shot at knocking the Argos off if they get the opportunity.
Last thing here, in terms of the Alouettes, it does feel like they're kind of falling off a cliff here a little bit. They're one victory in the last, I'm looking here, 3 weeks, was against the REDBLACKS, smidgen of
it. And they should have lost that game. So, that was what we talked about, games that got away. That was inexplicable how Ottawa, you could look at that final minute and a half of that game and just shake your head and say, it's kind of the season ended under a microscope. That was the kind of game the REDBLACKS have been losing. They were the better team. Were they the better team, though? Because they lost the game. Again, you don't get style points. But they blew that game. Ottawa REDBLACKS, it wasn't so much Montreal won it. I don't know how a receiver gets 20 yards open down near your end zone with a minute left. I don't understand. I know what they called. There were at least a couple of missed responsibilities in the play, but I don't know how does that happen? How does that happen at this level? Kind of sums it all up.
Yeah. But in terms of, I know, and it's frustrating. In terms of the Alouettes, we had Cody on last week. Did not have a great performance last weekend. And I don't want to say that. What does Montreal do? Because I've seen we need to put Caleb Evans in, and they go, no, it's still Cody. Show me. What would you do here? You're in the East.
Cody's your guy. You got to write Cody. With all due respect to Caleb, who I got to watch quite a bit over here the past couple of years, Cody's your guy, and you're going to ride with him And I mean, it wasn't long ago I thought he was one of the top up-and-coming quarterbacks in the CFL. And I don't know that he's necessarily lived up to that, and I don't know the reasons. But in my mind, after watching Caleb here for a couple of years, Cody Fajardo is your best bet. You ride with him.
Well, Tim, I wish you luck tomorrow here, today as this is recording here. Hamilton coming in, like you said, kind of a lost season here if this doesn't work out.
Appreciate it always.
Tim, we'll see you soon. Good luck and go Sens. What is it? Go Sens, go?
We'll go with that. We'll go with Go Sens, go.
Well, I'm excited. We had this gentleman on season preview talking the Argos, and I think you said at the time, I think the Argos are going to be pretty good. I don't know if we knew that they were going to be 9-1 here. Must be nice. I had Morley Scott on the same episode. You kind of the tale of two cities here with with life. Mike Hogan, how are you doing, sir? How's everything?
Probably better than Morley. That's how I'm doing. Every team has been there. Right now, it's Edmonton's turn. The first year I did play-by-play was 2000, and that was the John Heward year, and they were 1-6-1, and he was fired at Labor Day. And my first 2 years working with the Argos, 4-14 and 4-14. I'm really appreciating this run.
What do you attribute it to? I mean, obviously team looked good coming into last season, and we'll talk Chad and whatever separately, but I mean, just overall, what do you make of organizationally, what do you attribute it to?
Like everything. We had this discussion a couple of days ago about why everything was working so well. And when Mike Clemens took over, he said, I want this to be the most boring organization on the planet. We all kind of looked at him and said, huh? And he said, I just want us to make the right decisions all the time and to do the right things. And it seems like everybody is. They've hired, signed the right players, drafted the right players. They got the right coaches. The coaches have added the right players for them. The players are buying in. It's an incredibly workmanlike group. They have their fun, don't get me wrong, but they're all business. And it's obvious. I mean, they don't make very many mistakes. On or off the field, everything seems to be chugging along. So there are about 42 million different reasons why, the dominoes are all lined up right now, but thank God they are.
Have you noticed that resonating more in Toronto itself, kind of in the fan base?
Yeah, it's great. I don't know what it's 20-some% improvement, but like 25% plus improvement at the gate. That's number one. And is that an overwhelming number? It is and it isn't, because we were starting so low. So we still have a long way to go, but you're starting to see the momentum build. You're starting to see the efforts that we've made as an organization to attract younger fans to CFL games is paying off big time. If you went to a game pre-COVID and a game last week, you would be able to see a discernible difference in the age of the people coming to our games. We're getting more vibe with radio and local stations and newspapers, and everything seems to be going really well. And, in a market that's really had to fight for CFL attention, having this kind of team with, some players who have some star power behind them, it's all adding up. And again, those dominoes that are lined up continue to start falling down. And it's a wonderful thing to see.
It's interesting, on my feeds and whatever, and obviously pretty in the CFL stuff. I don't know the last time I saw any story about making fun of attendance or crowds or the city. Like everything Toronto right now is they're kicking ass. Chad Kelly looks great, signing big extensions. AJ Alouette just being like a superstar of the world. And I want to get your thoughts on him, but I guess it's probably harder to make fun of a team when they're 9-1 and just, completely dismantling the rest of the league. But I can't remember the last time I saw anything real negative or even poking fun at Toronto, if that makes sense.
It's great from my end too, because I think for the last 25 years, every time I go on an interview like this one, the question is always asked, what do you have to do about the attendance in Toronto? And like I said, we still have a hell of a long way to go. But we're moving in the right direction in an era where it's getting tougher and tougher to get people to go out to a live sporting event. we're finding a way to do that. And 8-1 and scoring 40 points at home, basically every home game, with the cannon going off nonstop and the wonderful way we're winning. I mean, if we were 9-1 right now and winning the games 12-8, I don't think you'd see the same kind of buzz than when in every game that Chad Kelly has started and finished, the Argos have scored at least 31 points. That's going to win you a lot of football games.
I guess first we'll start there because I wanted to talk to AJ as well. But, obviously, Chad getting the extension. I had said at the beginning of the season, I don't know, is Chad going to be in the CFL 5-6 years? Is that what he wants to do? Watching the game over the weekend and the sideline cameras they had of him having fun, dancing, playing to the crowd. And obviously that's got to feel good to, come in and kind of kick Hamilton in the face at home. But I don't know of a man who's having more fun in the CFL right now than Chad Kelly. It's really cool to see.
I think I have the name right, but he said in his media scrum after signing the contract, he said, I haven't had this much fun since I was playing at Grand Island, which was youth football in Buffalo. And, think about this as a guy who was a two-time all-SEC player, won a national championship at the college level, the junior college level, and now he's having fun. That speaks to what this offense has been about, what his experience in the city has been about. His teammates love him. He loves his teammates. I'm one of the first guys in there in the morning having breakfast, and Chad usually beats me in there to the breakfast room after he's already done his film study. So he's that guy. He's a coach's dream. And we were asked a lot, I think, as an organization, what we were going to do without McLeod Bethel-Thompson. And don't get me wrong, we miss Mac up here, but we were totally confident that Chad Kelly was going to be a great quarterback. We didn't know if he'd be this good, but, I think it's 26% of his drives this year have resulted in touchdowns. That's nuts. But that's the Argos offense struggled mightily against Hamilton and scored 41 points, and none were on returns of punts or kickoffs or interceptions. It was 41 offensive points when the team didn't put up 350 yards. Like it was nuts.
Obviously, going with Chad with McLeod leaving and all of that. Obviously, they had a lot of faith in him. Now giving him this contract, early-ish, whatever. I mean, mid-season kind of doing that. What does that speak to the organization's just belief in him and just how confident they are? Because like you said, they knew he was going to be good, but maybe not this good.
Yeah, he's having a blast here. We have every confidence in him. He has been better than advertised. Let's face it, when he came to the CFL, there was some baggage from young Chad Kelly. He checked that baggage at the border. He couldn't be any better. He's working with youth groups. He's at Daily Bread Food Bank. He's at Launchpad working with underprivileged kids. He's that guy. He's embraced the role of team leader. It's a cape that he wears very well. And, on and off the field, I don't think you could expect anything more from Chad this year. He's been everything that was advertised, and he's exceeded even those high expectations.
I mean, to me, he's the advertisement now for what, if you're the CFL, hey, you could go not wallow around, but you go be on a practice squad or go do whatever. You can come up here, you can be a superstar, you can make, high six figures, you can be a community, icon and kind of all that stuff. I'll be curious, parlaying this into the future here. How do we utilize Chad Kelly in that kind of story to get, because he doesn't necessarily, he obviously isn't the only one, and it's happened in the past, but kind of continuing that narrative now.
Yeah, and he was, there's the Bell Rogers thing here, obviously, and Bell very CFL friendly. We're finding Rogers has been really good this year. Chad was on the Fan 590 morning show yesterday as we speak, and TV's been a little bit more like it's becoming a thing up here, and 9-1 helps, and you've got a charismatic guy. Obviously, the Kelly name is known. The football purist knows who Chad is. The casual fan knows who Uncle Jim is from just down the road in Buffalo. And, Jim's been to at least one home game. His parents and family members come up every week. So it's really become a Kelly family thing. And I think Chad's just having fun playing football as opposed to coaching, which he was doing 2 years ago. thinking his career was over, and he's playing football. He's playing exceptionally well. He's close to friends and family, loves the city of Toronto. The city of Toronto showing love to him. It's win, 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 win.
In terms of AJ Ouellette, like I said, we do our kind of weekly recaps here after the games. And I mean, he's becoming just this mega superstar literally week to week. And like this Thor's hammer, and he's on he's messing with Kate and everyone at the end of the show. And you've got what is he like? And just, not only just on the field, but I have to imagine just that personality in the locker room has to kind of, be just captivating.
He's a fun guy. Like he just, I don't know if I'd call him a leader other than by example. He is crazy in his commitment to weights. Like he's got muscles in places most people don't have places, right? He's just that guy. And he leads a group every morning. They call themselves the Breakfast Club. I forget what time it is. I think it's 5:30 or 6 o'clock weights. And if you're there a certain amount of times per week for a certain amount of weeks, you get the Breakfast Club T-shirt, which is a status symbol. But that's kind of his contribution off the field, is to make sure everybody's doing their weight work. And he's a fun guy. That's who he is. He's a guy from small town Ohio who's having a blast playing football, and his non-football life is doing what he does, and that's fitness. With his places back in central Ohio. And, he's just that guy. Everybody loves him because when you look at him, he's 5'9", right? He's not going to run a 4.2 40. He's fast, but, he's that guy that gets every ounce out of his ability because he works so damn hard. And I think any fan of any sport always likes that guy. He's a walk-on at Ohio. And now all of a sudden he's, starting for a team with a 9-1 record and was a hero in the Grey Cup with 2 touchdowns a year ago. He's loving life right now. With his childhood sweetheart, it's a great couple. Everybody in the room loves him. Like he's that guy that you hope he would be when you watch him and become a fan of the player. He's never. People were actually criticizing him in print that in a game that was fairly one-sided late in the fourth quarter, he was signing an autograph for a fan. Like, come on. Like, isn't that what you want? He's a popular guy. He's a popular player, and he's a dream from our standpoint.
No, that's a CFL problem there. That was like him doing the Thor's hammer and them. Chad Kelly said, well, I'll take care of that fine or whatever. Let's let him do that. But it is crazy. It's crazy that you have Andrew Harris, who is a first ballot Hall of Fame and top in every single accolade, and he's almost an afterthought right now in terms of a lot of at least just the spotlight that the team's getting. I mean, I know he's getting his yards and everything else, but just tremendous. Like what a problem to have there.
You know what I love more, and it's not what Andrew does, and we saw him. He scored the first touchdown of the game on Labor Day, so he's still that guy. But he has become AJ's biggest fan, and you think a guy with the resume that Andrew Harris has been able to accumulate. Some guys late in their career get a little bit jealous of the new kid coming in, and Harris is not that guy. I'm sure Andrew would love more touches. That's there's ego involved in pro sports, but he has been the most supportive guy in the world. And AJ likewise of Andrew. When Andrew is in there, AJ's on the sideline cheering. When AJ's in there, Andrew's doing likewise and high fives when they come off. It's a great situation to have. And what we love is that Dinwiddie's been able to find quite a few sets in the playbook where those two are on the field at the same time. Which, must screw up defenses quite a bit when you see two guys of that caliber, sometimes both behind Kelly, sometimes split out, sometimes both out in the pattern and, moving around late. It's a fun team to watch. And those two are just fantastic. But again, Andrew Harris has been the consummate pro in a situation where not everybody would be.
Been pretty glowing on here so far. That's good. A little love fest.
I like it. I'm good. This is good.
That's good. Someone that's not maybe having as good of a time right now, the Alouettes, right? Really coming off of a couple hard losses, and Cody didn't play particularly great. I don't know if I blame his appearance on our show last week for that, but them coming in this weekend, this is a big game for them, right? And obviously the Argos want to take care of business. And what are you looking at for them? Because they're second in the East, but I don't know. It feels like they're kind of getting ready to fall off a cliff here, maybe.
They've still got the leading receiver in the league. William Stanback has 1 touchdown this year. That's not normal. You expect that kind of thing to turn around. They've got a lot of really talented players, and Ellingson's back, and those guys are still those guys. And in the early part of the new millennium, the Argonauts could not beat the Montreal Alouettes. They couldn't do it. And I don't know where that is right now. The toughest game, aside from the loss without Chad Kelly in Calgary, toughest game was against Montreal in Montreal. They put up, 35-27, I think was the final score. So they put some touchdowns. They get a kid come in there. He scores 3 touchdowns through the air. They've got some players there, and they're hungry. They know how important this is. They want to catch us, and they also want to stay ahead of Hamilton and Ottawa. And one of those teams is going to win on Friday night. So there's 2 points getting closer, or a tie in a rarity. There's still 2 more points getting closer to the Owls. So they know where they are. And from an Argo perspective, it's not just a motto. It's everybody's focused on this game. As they say, our goal this week is to go 1-0. And if the Argonauts can do that, the playoff spot will be clinched. If they go 1-0 this week and 1-0 next week, which is also against Montreal, they clinch first place in the East in the middle of September. So there's a lot to play for, and Montreal does not want to see their aspirations of first place go down in flames. And if they win these next 2 games, they're only 2 points behind us. So there's a lot on the line.
A lot for Toronto to play for. In terms of the other 2 teams in the East, do you have a way one way or another? I mean, both are kind of wallowing right now. Like you said, there's going to be a victor, one way or another after the game on Friday. So, hopefully. What do you make of that between Hamilton and Ottawa?
It's 2 teams that are desperate, right? And I think both teams think they're a lot better than the record indicates. Ottawa had higher aspirations this year. Hamilton had aspirations of going to a Grey Cup game that they're hosting. So neither team is obviously in a good place right now, but there's enough talent on both teams that they can turn them around in a hurry. And losing this game would not be good for either team. So it'll be tough for Hamilton like it will be for us. It's even tougher for them because they played Monday and then they got to strap it up again on Friday, which is not easy. And it's very tough on the linemen specifically. So I have no idea what's going to happen in that game. I'm just expecting a really physical battle because it's so important, especially when teams are looking over and seeing that Calgary's starting to heat it up a little bit out west. And I would imagine in Hamilton and Ottawa that there were some people going, oh no, when Calgary came back over Edmonton last week. So I'm just on Friday night, no idea what's going to happen. I just know I'm going to sit back and be entertained.
Last thing for me, obviously we talked, the Chads and the AJs for the Argos, but what's maybe some underlying storylines that you're keeping an eye on that you're going to be watching?
Want a neat stat?
Sure.
I'll throw a couple at you.
Okay, I'm ready.
The Argos lead the league with 37 sacks. They also lead the league with 10 sacks given up, the fewest and the most. It's plus 27, basically at the midway point of the season. The team record is plus 30. So they're on pace to blow that out of the water. And the other one is the Argos have an opportunity to win to start 10-1. That's only been done once in Argo history, Doug Flutie's first year here. So if you compare the teams 10 games in, 9-1 versus 9-1, this edition of the Argos has scored 4 more points than the Doug Flutie Argos of 1996. That's the kind of team that this group is right now. It's doing some very strange things in terms of Argo history, which I guess in the 150th anniversary season should be expected.
It's good. It's those new, the powder blue uniforms or whatever they call it.
You like it?
It's hot. Well, Mike, like I said, must be nice right now. I almost threw my laptop off the deck the week that the BC Lions played you guys and Vernon gave up 6 interceptions. So it's been trying times for everybody that's not in Toronto right now, but I really appreciate it. You taking the time and good luck. It should be a good weekend of games.
They always are. Thank you, my friend, and thank you for doing what you're doing.
Huge special thanks to all 4 of the guests coming on today. Really appreciate Morley Scott coming on before practice, making time. Darrell Davis here coming back to work at the Regina Leader Post. We have known Darrell long enough that he was retired and now is unretired and writing again. Really appreciate that. He says that the Riders are hot right now with the newspaper, and ads and clicks and everything is good for that. So that's great to see for the the health of the league. Really appreciate Tim Baines coming on, and then like I said, Mike Hogan making the time. Mike's always quick to hop on. Really appreciate that. As busy as all these people are, making time to come on, so it means a lot. Like I said, hope you guys enjoy the NFL weekend this weekend. You got CFL games along with college on Saturday, so make time for that. We will be back on Monday, I think was the plan this week. We are switching around the time a little bit for the recap, but keep an eye on Twitter. We'll get you posted on all that stuff. Evan and Jason and I will be back on Monday. We're recapping the CFL Week 14. Craziness here, working through the season. So like I said, like and subscribe. Thanks always. See you next time.